The verdict on the national debt is in, and it's that the U.S. owes a lot. Just how much and what the funding is being used for. Plus,
our hope is that where there has been damage, we can get some support.
Parts of the Carolina coast evacuated after Hurricane Ian, what researchers found, and
Pat McCrory's ad attacking Ted Budd on Russia, a low-down, dirty hit job.
We're closing in on those midterm elections. Why you need to be aware of political ads and what they say. Well, the U.S. is starting the fiscal year $31 trillion in debt. That's with a T. The total is only $316,000 less than the national debt ceiling. The national debt limit is kind of like your credit card limit. The government borrows money to fund programs and services like Social Security, healthcare services, and national defense. Well, it also funds things like the recent student debt relief plan. But with the country using 99% of its available credit, we're going to dig into what the debt ceiling does, what adding to our debt does, and what the financial future looks like for just an everyday American.
So let's run through some questions about the debt limit with the help of our sources. Dean Baker from the Center for Economic and Policy Research, David Wessel from the Brookings Institution, and Thomas Kahn from American University. Let's start by verifying what exactly is the debt limit.
The debt limit is the amount of money that the government is allowed to borrow, which the government uses to meet existing obligations.
It's simple math. Money coming in from taxes versus money coming out for spending. The difference gets added to the debt. And if that number goes over the debt ceiling, Congress has to vote to allow the Treasury Department to bump up the limit. Now, Congress could also choose to suspend the debt limit for a period of time, which brings us to our next question. Let's verify, have both parties voted to suspend the limit in the past? Our experts say that the answer is yes.
I couldn't even count all the times that we've had to raise the debt limit because, obviously we've been running up larger and larger debt over the decades. So, repeatedly they've raised the debt limit. Usually it has not been controversial.
The reason the debt ceiling has to be raised is because we are paying the bills for spending and tax cuts that Congress has already approved. Even if Congress passed not one nickel of Joe Biden's agenda, we'd still need to raise the debt ceiling.
So let's take a look at one of the things contributing to that national debt that is very much top of mind right now, and that is the student loan forgiveness plan. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says it will cost the U.S. about $400 billion over 30 years' time to cancel up to $20,000 in federal student loan debt for millions of Americans. A group of Republican-led states are now suing the Biden administration over the president's plan to do that. The lawsuit accuses the administration of overstepping its executive powers. But the Department of Education is still making plans right this very moment to move forward with accepting applications from borrowers.
This action by President Biden will quite literally change and save lives.
While Democratic lawmakers and student groups celebrate President Biden's plan to cancel student debt and the call for the Department of Education to quickly implement it,
in reality, the president's actions violate the law and are beyond his authority.
Arkansas's Attorney General, joined by 5 other GOP states, are suing. They want to block the administration's plan to forgive up to $10,000 in student debt for those earning less than $125,000 and up to $20,000 for Pell Grant recipients. Now, the administration argues that a law passed by Congress, the HEROES Act, allows the White House to act in times of national emergency.
But President Biden is using this law to justify this forgiveness program with COVID being the national emergency. Perhaps President Biden has simply forgotten that he declared the COVID pandemic over.
Persis Yu of the Student Borrower Protection Center says the Department of Education is still working to release the application for borrowers in October.
There are a lot of lawsuits flying, but the administration is going forward, and so borrowers should get ready to apply for this relief.
The Department of Education says borrowers with federal loans owned by private banks will not qualify for the new forgiveness unless they consolidated their loans into the government's direct lending program before. Well, critics of the student loan debt relief program are concerned that the plan could raise inflation. Wall Street says the program's impact will be small. But as the U.S. continues to face inflation at a near 40-year high, the Federal Reserve's aggressive interest rate hikes has many economists warning of a possible recession. Business analyst Jill Schlesinger has some tips to help protect yourself in case that happens.
Many countries define a recession as 2 quarters of negative growth. But here in the U.S., the National Bureau of Economic Research's Business Cycle Dating Committee is responsible for determining the beginning and end of recessions. To do so, they analyze different indicators and usually make the call after the fact. Recessions are part of the economic cycle with varying degrees of magnitude and length. To prepare for the next downturn, whenever it occurs, make sure that your emergency reserve fund can cover 6 to 12 months of living expenses. If you're already retired, consider making that 1 to 2 years worth of expenses to avoid being forced to sell assets at lower levels just to pay the bills. Keep this money in an accessible savings, checking, or money market account. Next, reduce credit card or any high-interest debt, especially if you're currently employed. Finally, if you're considering a job change, be careful not to make a decision that's based solely on more money. After all, when economies turn south, it's often the last person hired who's the first one out the door.